We interrupt our program to bring you a special broadcast.
Boom! Headshot!
Hey, it's Clay. How's everybody doing? I got a Battlefield Bad Company 2 game for you today. And I wanted to kind of talk about Battlefield Bad Company 2, compare it with Battlefield 3, and give some of my thoughts on the series as it's kind of progressed in the last 2 or 3 years. Because I think Battlefield Bad Company 2 has kind of come back into form a little bit, at least on YouTube, and, people are getting a little bit tired of Battlefield 3. I don't know if Armored Kill was the raging success that people were hoping that it would be. And Battlefield 3 is a little bit old. It's been out for over a year now, I think. Because I think the beta was I want to say the beta was last August or something like that. Don't quote me, but anyways, I actually started on Battlefield Bad Company 2. This was the first Battlefield game that I had played in the series. But I wasn't able to give it a fair shot just because I did not actually have a PC that could run it very well. So I think I was only getting like 30 or 40 frames, and it was really quite bad, actually. Very, very annoying. I was ticked, but that was what kind of spurned me to get a new PC. Because I actually have some really vivid memories of my roommate and I, watching some videos on Game Trailers, this Game Trailers website that we frequented a lot. And man, we absolutely went bonkers over the Bad Company 2 trailers. Talking about the destructible environments and all the explosions and stuff. It just looked so sweet. So, it looked very different from any other shooter that we had seen on the market. And then when I finally got a PC that would work, it was, I was kind of in console. I kind of was into Black Ops on Xbox. But I did play a little bit of this game. I actually mostly stuck to Squad Deathmatch. But I think Steam registers that I have maybe 50 hours played. And contrast that with about 241 hours played on Battlefield 3. So I am clearly biased towards Battlefield 3 in terms of hours played. I just want to get that up front. I'm not a good neutral reviewer of this game, and kind of to give my thoughts. But I want to do it anyways because I do think it is kind of an interesting thought experiment. But I think Battlefield Bad Company 2 had some really good elements. I think that if you look at the way that it balanced and operated the 4 different classes, I think it was superb. I think the way that they gave the gadgets to each class, the way that they did each of the weapons, I thought was really, really cool. Specifically talking about the way that the medic and the assault kits were balanced. The medics had the big light machine guns, and I know for a little while the I believe the M60 was pretty OP, but as a whole, those light machine guns were definitely inferior than the assault rifles as a whole. And that's the same is definitely true in Battlefield 3. But then you have the really powerful gadgets, and the kit attachments went with the revive paddles and the medic healing kit. You have those with the light machine guns. So you have inferior weapons, but superior gadgets. And I think that was a really good way to do it. I think that was a really, really cool way to balance it. The engineer class was pretty much the same as it always has been. The recon kit, they didn't have the spawn beacon, which I think was really huge. I think the spawn beacon at Battlefield 3 is it can be a real game changer sometimes. I think it's really underrated, and I think it's definitely one of my favorite equipment, things to have on my character. And one of the biggest reasons why I will actually choose the recon kit, even if I don't want to use a sniper. But they also, in Battlefield Bad Company 2, they had, C4, and they had that mortar thing. And the mortars functioned differently, which I actually really liked the way that the mortars functioned in BC2. The way that you have to actually spot your target and then, hold down a little bit for it to register. I thought that was a lot better way to do it than in Battlefield 3 when you actually set up the mortar and then kind of aim it on the mini-map. I didn't care for that. I didn't care for the way that it just seems a little bit more cheesy now, if that makes sense. In Battlefield 3, it seems, like you really don't have to have, I get totally direct impacted there. You really don't have to have, vision of somebody. You just kind of have to, know traffic patterns on a map and know, where people are going to be at and just kind of spam an area. Whereas I feel like in Battlefield BC2, it was a little bit more balanced. It was a little bit more useful. It just seemed like it functioned a little bit better. So I preferred that because I think that the recon kit now it really sucks that there's no way for it to actually deal damage to vehicles. I think that that's a pretty big flaw. And that definitely makes it a little bit more frustrating to actually try and play on some of the bigger, more vehicle-heavy maps when you're just getting absolutely dominated by vehicles. And I realize that Self-Flem is out there and that can help, but, like I said, I've said in a previous video, I have a hard time getting coordinated team effort just because I don't play with a party. But my next point is, so I definitely feel like in terms of overall balance, the nod goes to BC2. I think the way that they balance the kits is really good. Not necessarily even talking about the specific guns. I don't know if I really care about that, but I think the way that they balanced the kits was excellent. So next, let's talk about the actual weapons specifically themselves. I think Battlefield 3 gets a huge win in this category, just because there are so many more weapons in Battlefield 3. I think that the way that each of the weapons are balanced and the way that they function, I think is really cool. I think the way that the weapons feel, the way that they shoot, the recoil patterns, all that jazz is really, really good. And then when you bring in the attachments, not just like, let's just talk about scopes alone. I mean, in BC2, you have pretty much, the red dot or the ACOG. I mean, it's pretty limited in terms of scopes. And that kind of stinks. It's really cool, I think, to have that kind of customization ability in Battlefield 3, and I think that really adds to it. And the way that the different attachments affect the weapons, I think that's really cool. And as a whole, I think DICE has done a really good job of balancing specifically the weapons. Not necessarily the kits, but the weapons. I think they did a really good job. So I think Battlefield 3 takes the cake there on that one. Now, in terms of overall gameplay mechanics, things like how does the character move? How do the vehicles move? Animations, things like that. I think Battlefield 3 is absolutely unprecedented. I think that the feel of the character movement is so good. I mean, like the vaulting, the strafing, the running, all that stuff is really fluid, really seamless. You actually feel, like you're that guy. Whereas as going back, recording this footage for Bad Company 2, I just felt like, wow, this is really clunky. Little things like, I don't think you can actually sprint and strafe at the same time. So you can only sprint forward, whereas in Battlefield 3 you can sprint in pretty much any direction except backwards. And also, sometimes like the sprinting is it's almost glitched and it doesn't work like it should. And I don't know, as a whole, it just is the movement is definitely not nearly as fluid as Battlefield 3. And also with the vehicles, the way that the vehicles move, the explosions, all that jazz is really cool and really fun to be a part of. And in some ways, I think the destruction in Bad Company 2 was quite good. The way that the buildings destroyed, in almost any building was destructible. I think that was a really cool feature. But it was also a little bit annoying sometimes because I know on certain rush maps, like if the objective was in a building or kind of had the shelter of a building, and if you destroyed that building, you would destroy that MCOM. Like, that doesn't make any sense. They never set the charge and defended it. They just spammed a bunch of rockets at a building to get it to collapse. And that, I think, is pretty stupid. But, contrast that with, the way that in Battlefield 3 it seems like, if you're not playing on close quarters, there isn't as much destruction. There maybe isn't as much, in Battlefield Bad Company 2, the destruction completely changes the feels of the map. Whereas in Battlefield 3, it's, there are certain parts and certain lines of sight that can get opened up. But as a whole, it just doesn't function in the same way. So I think it's kind of a toss-up there. As a whole, the movement is definitely superior in Battlefield 3, but there are certain destruction elements that I preferred on Bad Company 2. Now, in terms of game modes, Battlefield 3 did a really good job of implementing new stuff. Even like Team Deathmatch. I have really come to enjoy Team Deathmatch quite a bit, and I would say that the Team Deathmatch in Battlefield 3 is really good. It's really, really good, actually, and it's really underrated because, I know Battlefield is definitely an objective game, and that's great. Like, Rush and Conquest are some of the best objective video game first-person shooters around. But at the same time, sometimes you just want to shoot people. And TDM, I think, is definitely superior to squad deathmatch. You get more action. And also the way that they give more power to servers. The server variety is really cool in Battlefield 3. You've got 64-man servers, whereas, maybe it's possible, but I haven't seen any 64-man BC2 servers. Maybe I'm just missing out, but the only thing I've seen is 32-man. So I definitely give a nod there to Battlefield 3. And they've also, I think, Rush and Conquest are obviously the same, but, with tank superiority, with, the close quarters stuff, Gunmaster, and Conquest Domination, I think that it just adds a lot of variety to Battlefield 3 that Bad Company 2 is kind of missing. I think Bad Company 2, kept more of sparing game modes, but they relied more on map variety itself to kind of bring variety. So I definitely give an edge to Battlefield 3 in that condition. But as a whole, I think Bad Company 2 is still a really sweet game. And I think, especially in terms of the balancing discussion, I think that definitely was... It seemed like Battlefield Bad Company 2 was less cheesy, if that makes sense. And I realize I haven't put in the time, I haven't been through all the patches. I was relatively late to the party. But as a whole, I feel like Battlefield 3 has a lot of cheesy elements. It has, there's definitely some annoying things. The USAS, the shotguns, the claymores, all those little things that just kind of irk you when you get killed by it. But, as a whole, I think that they're both really good games, and if you haven't really ever given Bad Company 2 a try, definitely do it. But in some ways, I think Battlefield 3 definitely takes the cake, and I think it was definitely a step in the right direction. But, it's still always cool to go back and recheck, replay, and get some more value out of those old games. Because old games are sweet. They have a lot of cool stuff going on, and, it's definitely... I think it's good to revisit some of those old things, and because there definitely tends to be a bit of a hype machine, if that makes sense, around new stuff. Just because the fact it's new doesn't necessarily mean it's better. But overall, it's kind of cool to look back and kind of see where the Battlefield series goes. I'm curious to see where they take it. With the next iteration, Battlefield 4, it'll definitely be interesting. But as a whole, I'm definitely glad I've come into the Battlefield series and taken part in it a little bit more. I'm glad I put the hours I have into Battlefield 3, and I'm really excited about moving forward. So that's it. I'm going to wrap things up here. Overall, I definitely think I prefer Battlefield 3. But that said, Bad Company 2 is a good game. It's definitely a really good game, and it has its own strengths in its own right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this as I get shotgun to the face, and I will see you next time.